Goldman Sachs. He is lining their pockets. I mean, Goldman Sachs just had record profits. 90% of their profits came from proprietary trading. None of it came from, mergers and acquisitions or investment banking or asset management. They just took all that cheap money, courtesy of their buddy, Chris Dodd, and they gambled with it. And they knew that if they bet wrong, Chris Dodd was going to be there with another bailout. And if they bet right, record profits for them. So yeah, Wall Street's going to give Chris Dodd a lot of money. All these special interests are going to give him, but no ordinary people are going to give him a quarter. He's not going to raise any money from any regular people. But I'm going to raise money. Like last quarter, I raised more money than any other Republican candidate. I wasn't even in the race. I raised over $1 million. And I'm going to raise a lot more money. I've got, a fan base around the country that will send money to me. I've got, so I can get in there and get money from all over the country, not from special interests, but from individuals whose only interest is liberty and freedom and the Constitution, that want me in Washington because they want me there, because they have confidence that I'm one of the only people that can make a difference if he gets there. So there's people that are committed to what I want to do. And I have a lot of people who will volunteer for my campaign, a lot of young people. Unfortunately, it's hard for people to get jobs right now, so they can volunteer to work in my campaign. I mean, I get emails from all around the world. High school, college kids from other countries want to come here and work on my campaign. And, so I think I'm going to have a lot of volunteers. No one's going to volunteer to work for Chris Dodd. Why would they? So he's going to have to pay everybody to work for him. I'll get a lot of people working for free because they believe in the cause, and I'll raise money. And if I have to, I'll throw in some of my own. But, I think if I get enough people behind me, that I can win, especially since he's so unpopular. He has to overcome that. I mean, right now, in the polls, I'm neck and neck with Chris Dodd, and no one even knows who I am. They're willing to vote for me just because I'm not Chris Dodd. So I think if a few people, get to know me, I think I'll pick up a few more votes, and then I should be able to win. Yes.
Do you know George Osborne?
No.
From England. He's the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. And it looks like the Tories will be taking over England in June. And he has proposed to cut the lucrative salaries and pensions of government workers. What effect would that have if you went in and you proposed the same plan, reduce their pensions and salaries?
Well, number one, the pensions have to, because the pensions are a sham, because there's no money there. When the government has a pension for its workers, it doesn't set any money aside. It just obligates future taxpayers to make the payments. There's no funding there. Again, it's an example of the Bernie Madoff financing. It's a Ponzi scheme. And it's illegal for private citizens to do it. The government shouldn't be able to do it either. So we have to substantially cut back on all sorts of government pensions, whether it's to their own employees or to the private sector. Because you know what? There's no money there. The country is broke. We overpromised and overspent, and we don't have the resources. And if we don't do something soon to level with the American public and make the necessary cuts in these programs, then no one's going to get anything, because the money's going to be worthless. And it's not going to matter if you get a pension check from the government or you get a Social Security check and you can't buy anything. So we have to do something to cut back on that before it's too late.
I have another question. Yeah. Energy policy. What would your solution be?
Well, one thing, we can abolish the Department of Energy. That's a waste of money. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of departments. We need to abolish the Council of Economic Advisors. A lot of good they did, right? We didn't even have them until the Second World War. We went through the entire Industrial Revolution without anybody advising anybody. We had no economists in Washington, and we did really good. But, the solution, look, we have to let the market function, right? I mean, that's what we have to do. If we have to lower taxes on the energy industry. But look, I'm involved right now personally. We just had the biggest oil discovery in history in the lower 48 states, up in North Dakota, up in the Bakken. I just started a partnership. I'm investing a bunch of my client money in there. It's now the fourth biggest oil exporting state in the country after Alaska, California, and Texas. There's tons of oil down there. We're putting, I'm drilling 9 wells myself. But the key is we just need to get capital. And if we just could lower taxes and lower regulations and let the market function, then we could drill for oil and find alternative energy. But we're not going to do that with all this regulation. And the government, if they would simply get out of the way and let the market function. But the Department of Energy doesn't produce 1 barrel of oil, just like the Department of Agriculture. Why do we have the Department of Agriculture? Why are we subsidizing farmers not to grow food? Why are we paying farmers to take food? They just had a report a couple days ago that 1 in 6 Americans are going hungry. Well, sure, we're destroying food. We're paying farmers not to grow food and to leave land vacant. What kind of stupid thing is that? Yet the politicians keep voting for these programs because there's a political constituency there. So we got to get the government out of energy, out of agriculture, out of all these things. Look how it's screwed up education. Now, I've been having this debate recently. They just jacked up tuitions at UC Berkeley. I went to Berkeley, and they're all protesting there. But, my father went to the University of Connecticut, right? And his parents had no money. He was the last of 8 children, and my grandfather was a carpenter, so they didn't have any money, right? And but my dad went to college. He didn't borrow any money. He worked his way through school. He had a summer job as a waiter, and he graduated in 4 years, UConn, debt-free. Why can't kids do that today? Because the government screwed it all up. Because the government came in and promised everybody student loans. And they guarantee all this aid for education. They guarantee all these loans. And so now the students take all this government money and they bid up tuitions. They all bid against each other. And so the universities say, this is great. We can keep raising our tuitions and the kids get the money from the government. So now college costs a fortune. The universities are rich because they made all this money. And the kids are stuck with a bill. And now we got all these kids going to college. The college degree is worthless anyway. They got to go and get a master's degree or a doctor's degree. So they're in school for 10 or 12 years. They're borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars. This system is a disaster. And it's bankrupting our kids and the families, and it's enriching this huge educational bureaucracy. What the government has to do is get out of the way. Stop the funding. Stop the student loans so colleges will slash their prices so kids can afford to go. But it's like wherever the government gets involved, if it's there, if it's healthcare, it screws it up. What the free market does is bring down prices and bring up quality. Right? Plasma TVs are getting cheaper every year. Cell phones are getting cheaper because the government doesn't get involved. If the government was involved, it would be like the post office. The stamps always get more expensive, but phone calls get cheaper. Because the government is delivering the mail. You don't think the private sector could deliver the mail for less? Of course. Oh, yeah.
2 questions. First, when you were discussing trade, I think that your question was cap and trade?
Yes.
Oh, the cap and trade is a disaster. I mean, cap and trade is just environmentalists trying to spread their socialism, and they're trying to label it as cap and trade does nothing to reduce pollution. I mean, it's just a socialist fantasy, and all they're doing is imposing higher taxes on energy use. I mean, it's just going to raise the cost of production. It's going to make us even less competitive than we already are. It shows you the mentality of Washington. They don't understand. This is a real crisis. Yet, what are they doing? Cap and trade, socialized medicine. We can't even afford all the stupid programs that we already have. How are we going to afford these new ones? Right? We are broke. They bankrupted us. Right? We need to be abolishing the programs that already exist, not burdening the economy with new ones. That would be a real stimulus. That would be a real stimulus to the economy, is to get the government to remove all the burdens and all the barriers that it put in its path and let it function.
The other question, when did you found your firm? In the 90s?
Well, my firm was founded by somebody else in 1980, and I bought it in 1996.
Okay. The question is this. Did you belly up during the party, or did you invest your money and your clients' money on the principles?
Yeah, I initially gained some notoriety with my clients. I started cold calling. And in 1998, 1999, I was calling anybody who would listen to me and telling them to sell their tech stocks, that it was a bubble, that these stocks were going to collapse. I predicted the market would drop by 90%. I was saying, get out, this is terrible. And a lot of people didn't listen to me, and they regretted it. And the people that did, I made them a ton of money. I got them out of stocks. And what was I buying in 1999 and 2000? I was buying gold when it was $260, $270 an ounce. I was buying oil at $17, $18 a barrel. I was getting people into commercial REITs and energy and agriculture stocks in Asia, in Australia, in Europe. I was buying stuff that nobody wanted, and it was great. And we had a huge run, and then, I accurately identified the housing bubble. I've been renting homes for years while people were making fun of me